I'm sorry. You're not going to say sorry? No. Why should I? Well, then leave. He could sing really well. He acted cool, and the crowd liked him. So, why did Simon Cowell refuse to even watch this singer ever again? What started as a good performance turned into one of the biggest fights in X Factor history. The cameras caught him dropping the microphone. The crowd heard the yelling, but what happened next was kept secret until now. People say Simon made a choice that shocked everyone working on the show. This isn't just about music. This is about fighting back, being in control, and the singer who pushed X Factor too far. The six-chair game. The six-chair challenge was never supposed to be easy. In fact, it was made to push singers to their breaking point. Unlike the hopeful feeling of first tryouts or the excitement of live shows, this round was all pressure. You had one chance to wow the judges, one shot to get a seat, and even then, that seat could be taken away just minutes later. In 2015, things got really tense, and it didn't take long for everything to go crazy beyond what the showmakers expected. Wembley Arena was packed with over 5,000 people that day. Each person in the crowd was ready to cheer, boo, and react to whatever mess happened on stage. The judges sat in their usual seats: Simon Cowell, Rita Ora, Cheryl Fernandez-Versini, and Nick Grimshaw, ready for long hours of performances. Everyone knew this round was tough, but no one could guess just how uncomfortable things were about to get. Among the many acts waiting to perform was a 21-year-old named Mason Noyes. He wasn't famous, not yet. In fact, most viewers probably didn't remember much about his first audition, which was shown for less than a minute during the earlier stages. It was a blink and you miss it kind of cut. But those who were there in person knew he had something special. Mason had given a confident performance mixing R&B, pop, and his own singing style. He looked sharp, carried himself with purpose, and didn't seem scared by all the noise around him. That presence alone was enough to make him stand out. But in the world of X Factor, standing out could be both good and bad, especially in a round like this, where big drama was expected and feelings ran wild. Backstage, showmakers were racing against time. Everything needed to move fast. Performers were moved in and out. Song choices were checked twice, microphones fixed, cameras reset. The format left no room for mistakes, and any moment could turn from normal to unforgettable in seconds. Singers either did great, failed badly, or in rare cases did something completely unexpected. Mason stood quietly in all the chaos. His name was called. He stepped forward, walked out under the lights, and took his place at the center of the stage. The crowd greeted him with polite clapping, the kind given to someone the public hadn't decided about yet. He gave a quick nod to the judges, microphone in hand, ready to perform. The music started. It was a modern mix, smooth and upbeat. He borrowed from artists like Justin Timberlake and The Weeknd, mixing high notes with rhythm, delivering vocal runs with ease. He moved confidently, but didn't overdo it. There was a control to his presence that showed he had experience. He wasn't just trying to win over the crowd. He was showing them he already belonged there. As he finished the performance, there was a quiet moment. The kind of pause where everyone waits for the first judge to speak. Mason stood still. The crowd clapped. Some even cheered. The judges looked at each other, slightly caught off guard. It hadn't been a bad performance, not at all. If anything, it was one of the better ones of the day. But then the silence went on just a bit too long. No comments came right away, no quick praise, no Simon smirk. Something felt wrong. Mason adjusted his mic, looked toward the audience, and took a breath. He had something on his mind. And in the next few seconds, everything was going to change. The 47-second spark. For most singers, getting to the 6-chair challenge was a dream. For Mason Noyes, it came with anger on his shoulder. What many in the audience didn't know, what most viewers at home completely missed, was that his first audition had barely been shown on TV. While other singers were featured in long clips, complete with interviews, reactions, and long pieces of their performances, Mason's audition was cut down to just 47 seconds. That fact stuck with him deeply. He wasn't angry just to be dramatic. From his point of view, it was personal. He had given a good performance in the earlier round. The judges had said nice things. So why was his TV time cut so short? Why was his name barely mentioned while other singers had their stories told completely? Those 47 seconds became more than a number. They became a symbol of everything that felt unfair about the process. So when Mason walked into Wembley Arena for the 6-chair challenge, he wasn't just there to sing. He had something to prove and something to say. After finishing his carefully made mix, the tension in the room was already building. He had hit all the notes. He'd given a performance that should have put him in serious running for one of the 6 chairs, but he wasn't waiting around for the judges to decide his fate. Before anyone on the panel could speak, Mason turned toward the audience. "I've got something to say," he began. It was quiet at first, just a few scattered sounds from the crowd. Then his voice grew louder. "You know what? I invite you all to film this or put up your phones. They ain't going to throw 4,000 or 5,000 people out." He wasn't joking. Mason was really asking the audience to record what was happening. He wanted this moment saved. Whatever was about to happen next, he wanted it on camera. The judges looked shocked. Simon Cowell especially. "Mason, just 1 second," Simon said sharply. "What gives you the right to say that?" Mason didn't back down. "With the first audition I watched on Saturday, people had 10 minutes, and I went to 47 seconds. The first audition I watched on Saturday, people had 10-minute slots, and I went to 47. That's when everything changed. The audience reacted right away. Some people clapped. Others looked confused. Many just watched, unsure whether this was part of the show or something completely unplanned. Simon's response was quick and harsh. "Mason, you know what? You are 5 seconds away from getting thrown off this stage. And I mean it." He wasn't yelling, but his tone left no doubt. The energy between judge and singer had turned mean and fast. "Don't tell me how long you should have on this show," Simon added. "Problem? Then just go. If you've got a problem, then just go." It was a clear warning. Say sorry and move on or leave. But Mason wasn't about to take it back. Not after what he felt had been done to him. The back and forth continued for a few more seconds. Mason stood his ground. Simon demanded a sorry. Mason refused. Then came the final moment. Simon stared him down. "Well then, go." Mason didn't say another word. He dropped the mic, turned his back, and walked off the stage, his performance partner following behind him. The entire arena fell into a shocked silence. Just like that, a promising singer was gone. Not because of his talent, but because of what he chose to say, and how he chose to say it. What happened next would send shockwaves through the show's production, the judges, and the X Factor fan base. But behind the scenes, something else was already happening, and Simon Cowell's reaction would soon take the entire situation in a very different direction. 5 seconds from gone. In the history of X Factor, few moments had fallen apart as quickly or as publicly as the fight between Simon Cowell and Mason Noyes. What began as a performance turned into a standoff, and once the battle lines were drawn, neither man backed down. When Simon said, "You are 5 seconds away from getting thrown off this stage," he meant every word. It wasn't a fake moment or a ratings trick. It was pure instinct. The power Simon had over the show wasn't just for show. He could end a singer's future in an instant. And in that moment, Mason was testing the limits of that power. From the judge's point of view, Mason's move seemed arrogant, disruptive, even rude. For the judges, who had been sitting through long hours of back-to-back performances, his sudden speech wasn't just surprising, it was jarring. The format wasn't built to let singers grab the mic and make speeches. There was a rhythm to the show, a system, and Mason had thrown that system aside in front of a live audience. But Mason didn't flinch. He didn't crack under the pressure of the fight. That by itself made things even more intense. When Simon demanded a sorry, it wasn't just about making things better. It was a direct challenge. Either Mason admitted he broke the rules, or he walked. Mason chose to walk. When he dropped the mic and left the stage, it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't angry. It was on purpose. He didn't shout, didn't storm off. He just left, still believing he had said what needed to be said. Backstage, reactions were mixed. Some crew members were caught off guard, unsure how to respond. A few admired Mason's nerve. Others called it foolish. The tension didn't end when he left the stage. It followed him into the hallways, out of the arena, and into the news coverage that exploded the next morning. Videos of the incident were shared online almost immediately. Fans argued their Mason had gone too far, or if Simon had overreacted. Headlines called it a meltdown. Some called it career suicide. Others saw it as a moment of fighting back against a machine that didn't treat every singer equally. Within the show's own group, discussions were already happening. Would Mason be banned completely? Was there any way back into the competition? That decision, many believed, would fall squarely on Simon's shoulders. And according to reports going around at the time, he wasn't interested in changing his mind about anything. One producer was quoted secretly saying the fallout behind the scenes was tense and that Simon had shown real frustration, not just with the disruption, but with the example it might set. The show thrived on high emotion, but there was a line. And from Simon's point of view, Mason had crossed it. Nick Grimshaw, Mason's category mentor, reportedly tried to make things better. He admired Mason's talent and saw potential in his ability to connect with younger viewers. But even he knew that keeping Mason in the game might come with a cost. For the rest of the singers, the incident sent a clear message. This wasn't the place to challenge the system. This was a show with rules, structure, and a hierarchy. Step outside of that, and your shot could disappear, even if you had the talent to go far. But while many believed Mason's journey had ended that night, the story wasn't finished. Far from it, the line Simon wouldn't cross. In the days that followed Mason Noyes' dramatic exit, the incident took over headlines and social media threads. Viewers had replayed the moment over and over. The mic drop, the standoff, the crowd's uncertain reaction. But the real drama wasn't playing out on screen anymore. It was happening behind the scenes where decisions were being made quietly and with finality. According to multiple production sources at the time, Simon Cowell wasn't just angry. He was done. What started as an uncomfortable exchange had, in his view, turned into something much worse. During a post-show meeting, Simon reportedly told producers it was disgusting, referring not to Mason's talent, but to the way he hijacked the moment and invited the crowd to rebel with him. That wasn't boldness to Simon, it was sabotage. A direct challenge to the show's structure, and one that, in his eyes, couldn't be ignored. That statement, "It was disgusting," soon became the phrase going around the production office. It wasn't meant for public release, but insiders shared it with the press. And that's how the tension got worse. According to those familiar with the fallout, Simon Cowell refused to watch any more footage of Mason Noyes. That's where the story took an even colder turn. One of television's most powerful figures didn't just reject the performance, he blocked out the artist entirely. And that led to the moment fans would later call the reason why Simon Cowell refused to watch this singer. It wasn't the vocals. It wasn't the mix. It wasn't even the challenge to his authority by itself. It was the way Mason had framed the fight, the movement. By inviting the crowd to take out their phones, by encouraging them to capture the tension, he had pushed the show into dangerous territory. This has gone horribly wrong. I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for entertainment. Reality television relies on control, editing, timing. Mason had shattered that rhythm, and Simon was never going to reward it. Nick Grimshaw tried to step in. As Mason's mentor, he believed the situation had spiraled unnecessarily. He argued for a second chance, not for showmanship, but for talent. Mason was different, yes, but he could sing. He had potential. Grimshaw reminded producers that viewers often loved singers who didn't play by the rules. Simon didn't see it that way. His stance was clear. No apology, no conversation, no more screen time. For a brief moment, it looked like Mason Noyes' journey had reached its permanent end. Fans wondered if we'd ever see him again on the show. Viewers argued who was right. And while Mason had become a trending topic online, the silence from the X Factor camp only added to the mystery. What most people didn't know was that behind closed doors, producers were faced with an unexpected problem. Another singer, Tom Blesby, had voluntarily left the competition. His spot in the next round had opened up, and there weren't many options left. That's when Mason's name came up again. Some insiders claimed the producers brought his name to the table without Simon's blessing. Others said Simon softened once he was promised there would be no more outbursts. But whatever the real reason, the decision was made. Mason Noyes was back in. It was a quiet return, handled without fanfare, without apology, and without a public handshake. But the tension hadn't gone away. Even if cameras weren't rolling, everyone knew Simon still hadn't forgotten what happened. And some believed he never would. Backstage deals and silent returns. When Mason Noyes re-entered the competition, it wasn't with fireworks or second chances celebrated on stage. There was no grand announcement, no comeback story made for the cameras. He simply appeared again, fitting into the lineup for judges' houses, replacing the withdrawn singer Tom Blesby. For viewers who hadn't followed the headlines, it was confusing. For those who had, it raised more questions than answers. How did a singer who publicly clashed with Simon Cowell and walked off stage in protest end up back in the running? The answer depends on who you ask. According to production sources, Mason's return came after intense internal discussions. With Tom's sudden departure, the show needed a replacement quickly, and options were limited. Despite the earlier drama, Mason had delivered one of the stronger performances during the six-chair challenge. Even Simon had admitted, though off-camera, that Mason could sing. The issue had never been his talent. It was his attitude. Nick Grimshaw, who had always backed Mason, reportedly pushed hard for his return. He believed the fight had been blown out of proportion and that Mason's confidence had been mistaken for arrogance. Grimshaw made the case that the competition needed a singer who broke the mold, someone unpredictable, someone the audience would remember. And he wasn't wrong. Mason was already a talking point across social media and entertainment news. Whether people loved him or hated him, they were paying attention. Simon, however, remained silent on the matter publicly. There was no statement, no commentary, and most noticeably, no interaction with Mason on camera once he returned. In fact, when footage aired of judges' houses, Simon barely acknowledged Mason's presence. Every move seemed intentional, every edit carefully crafted to keep them apart. But Mason didn't push the issue. Gone were the speeches, the crowd appeals, the fighting tone. When he returned, he did what he came to do: perform. His appearance at judges' houses was focused and polished. He gave the judges no reason to doubt his musical ability. Still, the tension hadn't disappeared. Everyone on set felt it. Even the other singers were unsure of how to treat him. Some viewed him with a mix of curiosity and caution. Others kept their distance entirely. A few quietly admitted they admired what he did, that he spoke up when no one else dared, but no one said it too loudly. Mason himself didn't speak about the incident for several weeks. When he finally did, he chose his words carefully. "There's no bad blood," he told one reporter. "I had a private conversation with Simon. We sorted it artist to artist." That statement raised eyebrows. Had Simon really agreed to talk, or was Mason simply putting on a united front for the sake of staying in the competition? No one could confirm either way, and Simon never publicly addressed whether that conversation happened. His silence, as always, said more than words. What mattered now was performance. Mason had survived one of the most famous moments in X Factor history and somehow re-entered the competition without fanfare or forgiveness. That alone made his presence compelling. But for all the attention he had earned and all the noise he had created, Mason now had to answer a far simpler question. Could he win people over on talent alone? Because despite the headlines, despite the drama, despite the moment that nearly ended it all, there were still chairs to fill and one stage left to conquer. The echo of a mic drop. Mason Noise didn't win X Factor. He didn't even make it to the finals. He placed 7th. But that was never the full story. What people remembered about Mason wasn't a particular note he sang or the exact songs he chose. What lingered was that moment, the mic drop, the fight, and the uneasy silence that followed. In the years since, the fallout from that fight has taken on a kind of legend. It wasn't the first time a singer challenged a judge, but it was one of the rare times the fallout seemed to carry real consequences. According to multiple insiders, Simon Cowell refused to watch Mason's footage after the fight. And even when Mason returned for judges' houses, Simon reportedly stayed distant. The now famous backstage quote, "It was disgusting," became shorthand for how Simon truly felt about the whole situation. And yet, Mason didn't flame out. He didn't disappear. After the show, he changed direction completely. Music remained a part of his life, but he stepped away from chasing fame in the way most singers do. He focused on personal growth, wellness, and even healing. In 2019, Mason revealed he had nearly died from sepsis, a close call that changed his perspective. Since then, he's spoken more about mental health and change than record deals. His journey became less about proving himself to the music industry and more about building a life outside of it. For someone who once challenged a primetime TV machine, that shift almost made sense. As for Simon, he never publicly talked about the incident again. He moved on, as the show always does, with new singers, new drama, and new moments to analyze. But Mason's name still comes up among fans whenever people talk about the most controversial moments in X Factor history. That standoff was raw, unrehearsed, and undeniably real. And the title stuck for a reason. Why Simon Cowell refused to watch this singer. Not because of poor vocals, but because Mason had challenged the unspoken rules of the show. He questioned control. He disrupted the flow. And for that, he was nearly erased. Yet even that attempt to erase him failed. The clip lives on. The headlines still go around. And Mason, for better or worse, left behind a story that people still talk about nearly a decade later. He didn't win X Factor, but he did make his mark on his own terms. What would you have done if you were in Simon's shoes in that moment? And do you think Mason crossed the line? Let us know in the comments and subscribe to our channel for more. If you enjoyed our video, make sure to give it a like. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Till next time.